I mean, here's me. I consider myself one of the toughest people on the planet, whether that was in my mind or not. Seeing my daughter go through that, I was like putty.
Welcome to the Focus on the Family broadcast, helping families thrive.
Hey, Jase and Missy, welcome to Focus on the Family.
Thank you.
Good
we
to
are
be here.
blessed to have you. Your book, Blessed, Blessed, Blessed. We're blessed to have you guys here. What fun you put on television through the series. And how many seasons have you done this now, Jase?
Let's see, 5 years. How many seasons?
11 seasons and 130 episodes.
I am so
Yeah,
glad to
I
see
lost
you
track.
guys are just like Gene and me. So you've got to correct Jase occasionally. Is that right? Is this normal for husbands and wives?
This is normal.
We have loose facts. Wives have the facts.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just after a while, it just all got into a montage.
Well,
It's-
you know, that's why we're created as a helpmate. So I'll just wait and see if he gets it right. And when he doesn't, I'll correct him.
Yep, that's
So that's it.
That's how it works. Off mic, you were correcting. You were a little loose on the age of your kids.
yeah. I was close though.
You were close.
You
You
were
were within a
close.
year or two.
Our oldest is 22.
Correct.
Then Cole is 19, and then I forgot she just had a birthday. I
A
mean,
couple of months ago, but yeah.
That's
It
why you
happens
forgot,
every
right? It
year.
was a couple months ago, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
stuff has happened.
You two have been married 25 years, roughly. I won't ask specifically. I don't want the date, Jase. It's 25 close.
yeah, it's north of 25.
Okay. Is
Are
that
you
right?
serious?
Seven?
Thank you. Like, are you
7.
serious?
I had to do the
Gonna
math.
say you don't
Help
know.
him out here.
Welcome to Focus on the Family. Today we're counseling
Live
Jase and
counseling.
Missy. I love it. But, you know, I related to part of the story that I read in your book about wanting to go through life single, because I went through that phase, and it was about a 2-year phase for me where I said, okay, Lord, I'm not dating. I'm done with that. I want to be true to you. I was probably 22. So that was a tough time to have that mentality. And I remember I was sold out. This is what I'm going to be. I'm going to be Paul. That's what I wanted to be. And shortly thereafter, about 2 years later, some guy came up to me and he said, hey, you know, the pastor actually said, God has your mate, your wife picked out for you. And she's going to have a heart for the things of God. And I thought, this guy's wacko. He doesn't even know I'm going through life single. That was Wednesday night. I met my wife, Jean, Saturday. Is that an amazing thing? And you
The same
you said
thing
the same
happened to
thing.
me. Of course, I made a decision, to follow Christ when I was 14. And, in my book, I wrote about that. Here's my dad who had all this bitterness towards, because when I was a kid, he wasn't a Christian, but I got to see God's evidence right in front of my eyes with him being transformed.
How
And,
big was that change? I mean, paint
Oh,
that
it
picture.
was huge. I mean, he went from one of the worst people on the planet.
Just the way he treated people, anger and all that stuff.
Anger. Well, he was just drunk every night, fist fights, he beat on my mom, us, he cheated on my mom. He was in trouble with the law.
Wow,
I mean,
and you
it-
saw
every
that
night.
change.
Every night. And then all of a sudden, which led to a separation. And so I didn't see him for months. And then the next time I saw him, I knew something was different. We had moved to West Monroe, which is,
With your mom.
where we're at now, right? He basically kicked us out, and which is kind of laughable, we should have just left. But and then he transforms, but as a kid you get bitter, and I just I was scared of him, and when I heard the story of Jesus, his death on a cross and the resurrection, it hit me that I thought, if I'm going to embrace Jesus's grace and his forgiveness, I'm going to have to forgive my dad. And he had proven it, really. It had been years, since he had turned around, but I was just still bitter about it. But so that day, where they still live, the Washita River backs up to his backyard. I made that decision to follow Christ, and through that to forgive my dad. And then, so here I am as a teenager trying to live a Christian life, which I think is the most difficult thing to do on the planet. And I dated a few girls, and I told them, where I stood, because I wanted to wait till I got married. I wanted to do it God's way, and I would tell these girls when I went out on a date, the first thing I'd do, I'd have my Bible. I'd say, look, I'm a follower of Jesus. I believe he's coming back. And that usually ended the date. Well,
that was one hot date, huh?
and most of it I was getting frustrated, and I said, that's it, I'm done. And as soon as I said I'm done, it wasn't a week later. And me and her, Missy and I, had a conversation we were at some kind of teen devotional or something. Mm-hmm. And I had dated a girl who was not a spiritual girl at all. We had just broken up, and she was friends with that girl. And we decided to go out on a date at the school where they went together, just to kind of make her jealous.
Now remember, I was 16 and he was 18, so we weren't the most mature.
Yeah, we were being juvenile.
Yeah, your brains weren't fully developed.
Yeah, right.
And so then we actually had, we had a good time. And then I gave her the speech. Then we actually went out on a date, and I gave her the speech. I'm a follower of Jesus. I want to help people get to heaven. And she's like, I'm in. And that literally is how I was like. She was the first girl I ever took out that when I gave them the I'm following Jesus speech, she was like, sounds great to me.
But what's awesome about that, being a father of two teenage boys right now, 17 and 15, my boys. That's the kind of character you want to see in a young man.
Absolutely.
And certainly a young lady. Mm-hmm. But Missy, you're coming from a family that's, the way I read it, more of your typical middle-class family, godliness, cleanliness is next to godliness, I think is what you said.
Oh, that's one of my dad's favorite sayings.
Yeah, talk about that. Of course, it's not in the scripture for those that don't know that. It's actually not in the scripture.
That's true.
But that was what your family's creed was.
Yes. Well, I'm not even sure if we were considered middle class, because my dad was a preacher and got all of his income by basically donations, because he has a program called We Care Ministries, and so we lived on people donating to that, and he traveled all across the country preaching. And my mom, bless her heart, has a master's education in vocal training and choral direction, but chose to not have a paycheck to help start our Christian school.
Sure.
So she chose to volunteer her time up until I was in middle school. And so when I found that out I think I was 30 when I found that out, and I was like, you mean we were poor on purpose? Like, you said no thank you to the paycheck, and you're trained. And so to me, that showed that they had such a servant heart, and they wanted their children to have that Christian background. And so they sacrificed a lot to help start our Christian school.
Did they have any, I'm probing into this, so if I'm beyond the boundary here,
Feel
just tell
free,
me. But
bro.
when you're now dating Jase, were they going, honey, do you know these people? Do you know this family?
Let me.
They were thumbs down.
They were not thumbs down on the dating part. They loved Jase. They knew Phil was preaching all the time at his house and sharing the gospel, which if you look at my dad and you look at Phil, they look like total opposite ends of the spectrum.
Okay.
Dad is clean shaven, he's not an outdoorsman, he's not into sports, he's not into hunting, he is preacher.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you look at Phil, we know what Phil's like. Okay.
But
so
they do the same thing.
But they preach, they both stand and are passionate on sharing the gospel of Jesus. Yeah. So when my dad realized that that's what was happening here, he was all for us dating. Now, being engaged at 17 was not something my dad was ready.
That was a little more difficult.
That's where it all took a turn.
So what did he say to you, Jase?
Well, I didn't know. I was raised on the river, and we didn't have a lot of the social etiquette rules that most people have. And so Missy said, look, you need to ask my dad's blessing if you want to ask for my hand in marriage. And my thinking is, well, we'll be engaged like a year and a half. It wasn't like we were going to be married instantly. And she's like, well, you got to talk to my dad. So I was like, okay. So I thought it'd just be a formality. So I go to him. I was over to her house, and I was like, I want to ask your blessing in marrying your daughter. And he said, absolutely not.
Whoops. Not the way you planned for that conversation to go.
And so since, my maturity level was not where it needed to be.
How old were you at this point?
How old
19?
was I when
19,
I asked? I was 19, and you were 17.
I was 17.
She was 17. And I said, I don't mean right now, but just like in a year and a half. And he was like, no. And I said, well, you being a preacher, you'll appreciate what I'm going to say. I said, I have not laid a hand on your daughter in any inappropriate way. And I said, I want to quote a verse to you. And I said, it is better to marry than to burn with passion. That was the worst thing. Because I just saw his eyes get red.
not
You
go
didn't
over
find
well.
that the motivation
Dads
for a
with
good
teen
marriage.
girls would not respond well to that.
No.
Yeah.
So
my.
we
But
left.
there's a lot of truth in that, let me say. I mean,
Well-
there's truth in that we tend to want our kids to marry later, and they are burning in their passion. And as Christian parents, we got to think about that, don't we?
Yeah, and you know what's weird is we really never resolved that conversation. We just
Well, I
went,
think you did.
well,
I'm just saying.
we just went on like because I thought I'm doing this whether you do it or not. And I gave her the ring, and I figured on wedding day if they showed up, then we were all good, and they showed up with smiles.
Jace, we have Missy's father on the phone. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Now, wouldn't that be funny? We haven't resolved this yet. I
But
didn't wanna-
it hit me how he was feeling when my sons got that age, and they
Yeah.
were like, like Reid, he was like, I'm thinking about getting married. And I was like, you need to wait a little bit there. I
Wait
mean,
till you're
because that was
40.
my first, that was my first reaction. And my daughter, I don't even want to talk about.
Well, we're going to get into that because that's the bulk of the story in the book, Blessed, Blessed, Blessed. But that early marital stage where you were at, was everything pretty reasonable? You're both coming from Christian homes now. Did you have it all buttoned down and wired, Missy? Did
Heck no.
Jace, after a big hunt, come in and say, Missy, I just want to tell you how much I love you?
Yeah, no. No, the hunting days were hard, and they're still hard. After 27 years, hunting season is hard.
Don't they call you hunting widows?
Hunting widows, yes. I call it,
What?
I don't even call it hunting season. I call it the ordeal.
I think we need to
the
start,
ordeal.
though, by saying we did agree going
We
in.
did. And that's why,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to ask me about it, I feel free to talk about it. But I agreed 30 years ago that when we started dating and all that, he said, there's one thing you need to know about me. I hunt every day of hunting season. So if we're going to go any farther, you need to know that.
And you thought that
Yeah.
might be a week?
I had
No,
no
look.
clue. He told me,
I
he
told her.
explained it
First
all.
date, I said.
not first date. We
no,
didn't
no,
go over
no.
everything
I
on the
said
first date.
the first date, I told you that I love Jesus and I'm going to follow
Yes.
him. Are you in? Yes. About the third or fourth date, I said, if this goes any further, I need you to know I'm going to duck hunt every day of the season. Remember, I said, have you got a problem with that?
Babe, I remember that.
Yeah. And you said
also-
yes. And you said if we ever get married and have kids, I want them to go to the same Christian school that you went to. And I was like, deal. And so
I said, it's not free.
and so we had an agreement.
We had an agreement that I would not complain about him going hunting every day.
And she
And
has
he
it.
would not complain about how much money it was going to take to send them to our Christian school.
And the drive.
And it worked
and the
out
drive.
so far.
And the drive.
Almost 30 years.
Well, I mean, you got to remember when our kids got old enough to go to this school, we had no money. And so I was like,
True.
I know we made this agreement, but how are we going to pay for this?
So well, we've
And
got to
it's-
figure it out.
It's really amazing, just we
And
found
basically,
a
I
way
went
to
to
do it.
work. So I worked, and almost all of my paycheck would go to sending them to that Christian school.
Yeah.
That's what it
Missy
amounted to.
and Jace, the question I have to make this tangible for the listeners, fill in the blank is what I'm hearing. There's always going to be these disagreements within marriage.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, I get to hunt every day. I could hear guys going, I wish I would have made that deal. I didn't make that deal. Jace was smarter than me. Or the wife is saying, you know what, there are things that I thought we had agreed to that aren't happening. What kind of, just give me a little marital advice.
Well, there's
on-
always unmet expectations, always. And so whether it's sin or whether it's not sin, it can be either or both. But with me, with all of that, I would always remember I agreed to this. I mean, I can't go back and say, this is terrible. My life is horrible. And people would even come up to me, women over the years would say, I don't know how you do it. And especially when he would be gone, because, if the ducks weren't in West Monroe, because our lifestyle relied on the selling of that hunting video or hunting DVD, they had to make those hunting DVDs for us to continue living
Right.
and providing food for our families, basically. So they had to go find the ducks. So sometimes he would be
Yeah.
gone for 1, 2, 3 weeks at a time, and these women would say, I don't know how you do it. I'd put my foot down. And all I could think of was, number one, this is his job. And number two, I could be living a way worse life than this. And I thought, and I said this in my book about the military families. Their husbands are gone for weeks, months, sometimes years at a time. And do those wives put their foot down and say, nope? I mean, it's a sacrifice. And so what he's doing is not near what the freedom that those people are giving us in order to make this decision and make this choice. So I always lived out of gratefulness because, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult. And yes, sometimes I felt like a single parent.
Well, and I love that example. That's the right way to, you said it doesn't deal with sin. And,
No.
and now it's just choices of life and what you want to do entertainment and other things and feel fulfilled. And so many couples need that peace to say, this is okay. It'll be okay. It's not the biggest mountain in my life. And I appreciate that and what you expressed.
I figured out too. I mean, I need to provide for my family, but I also wanted to do what I love to do to make a living, because then I could feel like in my mind, okay, I'm working here. You know?
At least in your mind.
Well, yeah. I mean,
But he did,
it's
and so
true.
it's been years since he's had to do this, but he would go hunting sometimes all day. It might take all day to bring in the ducks, but that doesn't mean that the duck calls someone else was in there making them. That was still his job. So he would bring them and make them till 10, 11 o'clock in the living room with baby sleeping. Our baby
Even-
slept
even,
through the duck call making noise because it was put them together,
Yeah.
blow it a couple times, and throw it in the box. And that's what I would hear. I would hear the silence, then the call, and then the plop in the box. And that's what our babies went to sleep to every night.
But even in Duck Dynasty, what people don't realize, the first year that we were filming 8 to 10 hours a day. Then I was
6
going
days a
to
week.
Duck Commander and building these duck calls.
Right.
I did not sleep that whole year. And I finally told Willie, I was like, look, you either going to have to give me a raise or we got to train some people.
Was he going home after the filming?
Oh,
Was he-
yeah.
He's not showing
But he
up
would-
at the office?
No. And so we would be filming in there, but then everybody would leave. The cameras would leave, and I'd still have to, we had orders to get out, and I was the only one at the time, with our crew doing that. So, because it takes some skill to put them together.
Well, that is what makes you guys so real. I mean, you're still, normal folk, even though the Lord has opened up an amazing opportunity to touch millions of people.
No doubt.
And that's what I love about you. You guys have remained who you are, and I love that. Let's move to the kids. You mentioned one of your sons. Give us a picture of the kids. There's 3 children, right?
Yes. 3 completely different children. If
Oh, yeah, I
anybody
know that too.
Of mom or dad of any number of children know that they're all different. But Reid is our oldest. He's 22, and he was married last year, October of 16. And they live in Nashville, and he is a music writer and music performer. So, and Brighton, his wife, she's in nursing school, and in her last year. So I'm like, oh, good. They're going to be able
They're
to
getting
make.
there.
Yeah, they're going to have something to make them some money for a while at least, while Reid's getting his music career going. But we're super proud of them. They are committed to each other. I look back on our first year of marriage, and it was tough for many reasons. And I think we both talk about them in our books. But I keep asking Reid and Brighton, how are y'all doing? Anything we need to discuss?
That's right.
Because I'm thinking that something major's got to be going on. It's the first year of marriage, right? And they have come through recently, just, celebrated year 1, and they're like, we are rocking and rolling. And they're talking, they work things out. It's not like they don't fight, but they work things out and they
Sure.
go on. And
That's
and I'm
healthy.
so proud of them and their relationship. So
I see when they put God first that you can see that they make each other better, which then it makes me look at my life, because it's hard to see that in your own life. But then as I look back when we dated, I was like, that same thing happened. I just didn't realize it. Of 2 people seeking God first and then each other. It actually makes you better together. And I mean, you'll agree. I mean, ever since he has been with her, he's been more of a joy to be around.
since he's left.
That's what Phil says about you.
I mean, look, honestly, when he said, I'm thinking about marrying this girl, I was like, oh, yeah, you need to go for that.
She is amazing.
I
She's
didn't wanna
everything we prayed for.
I didn't want to
Man,
come on
that's
too
great.
strong, because you know how kids are. If you want something
Yeah.
really bad, they'll do the opposite. But I was like, yes, please.
Yeah.
Well, Cole is he's studying overseas in Argentina with Pepperdine. So he's a student with Pepperdine and absolutely loves it, and called the other night and said, "Can I stay for another semester in Argentina?" So I was like, "Okay, I can't imagine your dad saying, 'No, you have to come home and go to Malibu.'"
Right.
He's really mission-minded. When he's a
Very.
teenager, he's been on more mission trips than me and her combined. He's been all over the world, and that's just what he loves to do, and I can't be more proud. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, when my son came to me and said, I want to go to this country or that country and help other people, I'm just like, okay. I mean, I'm really proud of him. He's really doing
And that
good.
is a blessing from the show that we're able to financially do that and
Right.
allow that to happen. So we feel very grateful. And he does too. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah.
So,
So he
feels that way
appreciates it,
too,
yeah.
yes. And he's having a great time. And then Mia is 14 and she's in middle school. So this is a new phase. Well, I say new, it's 8th grade, but it just seems like 8th grade has been a big year for her. And I think not just her age, but because her brothers left home at the same time, the cameras pulled out at the same time, and she's kind of had to find herself of where does she fit in now, you know, with the busyness. So, but
And she's a teenager. I mean,
and she's a teenager.
She's just at that age where
She
you're
is.
trying to find yourself or whatever.
Oh man, I know that. You know that too,
Well,
John.
yeah, one of my daughters, when she was about that age, called it hormones.
Yeah.
My hormones are happening, Mom. It's like, yes.
That's
And-
such a good phrase.
And
yeah.
she's been through so much. She's been through 10, 11 surgeries, depending on your definition of surgery, I guess. But
Procedures, lots
many
of
more
procedures.
procedures, and she's always, you know, having to go to Dallas, which is her hospital, because she was born with a cleft lip and palate.
Yeah, we want to get into that. So tell
Yeah.
us quickly
Yeah.
at the end of today, and then we'll pick it up next time for day 2. But what happened? I mean, that's a big story.
Yeah.
It's a big story, and that's what the
We'll
book is
ask
about.
God when we get there to heaven what happened.
Yeah.
But because it happened, we had to figure out a way to deal with it. And so when I was 31 weeks gestation is when we found out that she was going to be born with at least a cleft lip. We couldn't tell anything inside the mouth at that time, and we were shocked. So first we had to deal with the initial shock of the situation because we knew nothing about it. We knew nothing about this condition. And of course, the first question is, why? Why did this happen?
How did you?
We were doing everything
yeah.
we thought right. you know.
Correct. Kind of transactional with the Lord, right?
Oh, yeah.
If I do all these
Yeah.
things,
But
everything
then I
will
felt
be a
guilty
blessing.
at first for asking why, because growing up in a very conservative Christian, I won't just say home, it wasn't just my parents, but just church and school and all this, you're kind of told not to ask why, because then you're questioning God. So you don't need to question, you just need to accept and trust that this was his will. And that's great on paper, but when that actually happens in life, that's the first question that comes to mind is why? And I thought, you know, if I don't ask the question, I'm not going to get the answer. So I'm going to ask. And I just started praying, like, why did this happen? And I think that has a whole lot of soul searching involved as well.
Which
But-
kind of led to about 3 months of us. She did the research, and I was doing more biblical research, thinking, how am I going to handle this? And I think we both came to each other because we were, you know, when all you do is ask why, and we didn't realize it, I think consciously, but we were kind of having our own pity parties.
Oh, yeah.
And we reached that same conclusion, and we thought, you know, we're blessed with this girl being born, and why ruin the moment, you know, with all this pity? And because it did have a different feel when we were in you know, when it was time for her to come out, I guess. There wasn't as much excitement as it was curiosity. How severe is this going to be?
And apprehension, a lot of
And-
apprehension.
How does this impact us? How does it impact her? What
Yeah,
are we gonna do?
and
I
in
can
my
imagine.
mind, you know, I thought it's probably not as bad as we're thinking. Well, when she came out, you know, my initial thought was, oh my, this is way worse than I thought it was going to be.
It was devastating, yeah.
Yeah, and Missy, she couldn't see her, and she was like, "What?" I could read her mind saying,
Well, I needed that first
How-
initial report.
"How bad is this?" And I gave a good godly lie. I said, "Oh, it's not that bad.
He
it's
did.
great."
Yeah. he
Because I didn't want to,
Yeah, no,
send
that
her
was
into
good
trauma
wisdom.
here after this. But I knew it was going to be tough then. And that's the deal with her condition. A lip, they can go in and correct in surgery. But when you get into the palate and the severe
bones.
nature and
Right.
bones, this is not something you can fix. And a lot of people don't realize that you manage it as they grow, because nothing ever grows right since it wasn't there to start with. And so, and that was a lot of frustration for us in trying to talk to people, because they were like, "Well, why don't you just go get it fixed?" And they're like, "It don't
It's a
really
process.
work that way."
Right, it's a process, and
Yeah.
we've got to come back next time. And I want to ask those questions because many parents are living that right now. They're in that place where you were back when Mia was born, and you're thinking, wow, okay, I'm going through something like that. It may not
Right.
be cleft palate and cleft lip,
And that's the
those
main thing,
things.
is to understand that don't have that guilt because you want answers.
Well, we want to
But you
get
just
into
need to
that.
find the
Yeah,
answer.
and what's great about it, and what we'll get into next time, is for a lot of this process, we got to turn around and learn instead of trying to always try to teach your kids something.
Right.
We learn because our kid taught us so much about endurance and perseverance.
Well, that's the beauty of it. And Jase and Missy, it's been fun, day one here, to get to know you better and how you got married and the background and all that. And let's come back next time and really dig into the spiritual value
Okay.
of what you learned through hardship. And here, especially in the United States, but Western culture, we run from that hardship. When I think the Lord is saying, I'm going to teach you something through it. So stick with me and trust me. It's what he's saying to us. And so often we want a clean life. We want an easy life. We want a simple life. So let's come back next time and do that. Your great resource, Blessed, Blessed, Blessed. It's a wonderful encouragement for moms and dads, husbands and wives, even singles, to say, okay, what does that road ahead look like? Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's been fun getting to know Missy and Jase and to hear their ongoing story of faith and hope during the challenges that Mia has been facing. We're going to hear more from the Robertsons next time. And of course, their story shows the value of life, the value of every life, and that's worth defending. Focus on the Family invites you to join us as we take a stand for life in a pretty dramatic way on May 4th in Times Square. You click the link on the screen for more details about Alive from New York. And then make sure you sign our Declaration for Life. We're gathering tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of signatures. We want to deliver those to our elected officials and representatives in Washington, D.C., to make your voice heard that life is valuable. And then if you can, donate to Focus on the Family as we take this stand in the culture. Your gift will make a big difference, and we'll say thank you by sending a copy of Jase and Missy's book, Blessed, Blessed, Blessed. Again, click the link on the screen or call 1-800, the letter A and the word family, 800-232-6459. On behalf of Jim Daly and the entire team, I'm John Fuller. Thanks for watching. Join us next time as we once again help you and your family thrive in Christ.